So yeah, I'm just going to make a quick introduction. Thank you ever so much, Holly, for sort of taking the time to prepare a talk for us today. And also, thank you ever so much for everybody again that's come along to this third online series. If everybody wouldn't mind during the lecture, other than Holly, obviously, putting their audio on mute, that'd be fantastic. So Holly Birtles is a fantastic installation performance and photographer. She studied at Slade and is now a practitioner nationally and internationally. Also teaching at an art school. I can't remember which art school it is, but yeah. So anyway, Holly, please take the floor.
Hi, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about, as you say, my photography, which kind of takes a number of forms. So it's not just photography. There's elements of performance and sculpture and drawing, moving image, but essentially it kind of is dedicated to photographs. And so I'm going to share a PowerPoint which I've made, so you should see images in a moment. Bear with me. Okay, can we all see that? So I'll just go along through the slides, so you can see on the first page that I've just sort of titled a number of first or most recent projects. C1 Monsters is the one I've been working on, the one I'll end up talking about. Will It Sink, Pretzel Dance, Lazy Boy, Bianca Potemkin, Land's End Jelly, On Growth and Form. I've also kind of labelled a few reoccurring themes within the work that are more recent and also historical. So I've highlighted ones I think are really important. Can we all see that? Yeah, okay, cool. Fiction and stage drama. So all images.
I think Adrian should as well, don't you?
Hang on, be quiet. Be quiet for a minute.
All images are staged, they are shot in a studio and sometimes on location. A performance and collaboration as well is really important. So often I work with opera singers and scientists and writers. Repetition is really key to some of the work, repeating sounds, gestures, expressions. Visceral tension is kind of a comment really around making three-dimensional objects which are kind of, you can touch, so they're very tactile, and they are flattened through the photography. Obscuring flatness as well kind of matches that or links with that. Noses, hysteria, so there's always this kind of reference back to extremities of emotional states. Mouths, recent themes include inflated outfits, and you'll see a few of those soon. Myths and legends and monsters, darkroom manipulation, so the work is analog but it's also digital. There's a lot of darkroom experimentation that happens in the negative process, but also the printing process. 3D into 2D, so creating three-dimensional objects and then flattening them is a kind of reoccurring theme. Ears, implying audible and implying the tactile, okay, an experiential loss, so all of those are kind of linked, thinking back on how we can imply sound. We can imply something we want to touch, but through photography we stop. Mysterious sea monsters, uncontrolled expression, misinterpretation, hats and balloons and extended limbs. So hopefully you can see these images here. And on the far right, you've got an image by Man Ray. This was described by Andre Breton as the first surrealist photograph. I'm showing it to you because I'm interested in what photography can do, what it can manipulate, how it can change the work. And this particular image is a shot of Duchamp's dust sculptures on glass. So what he would do is he would photograph them, and then I think the story has it that they went off for lunch. They came back, and he kind of opened and closed the shutter at the start and at the finish, and this is what happens. So people say, you know, it's like an aerial photograph. The other reason why I'm interested in this too is because it's ephemeral. It's like this piece of work, much like the outfits, the props I made, that is ephemeral, that you can actually record them, photograph them, and then become archived. On the far left, at the bottom image of Marcel Duchamp, and this is actually a projection of his ready-mades. So it's a corkscrew, it's a bicycle, it's, I think it's a hat stand or something like that. And it's projected onto a canvas and painted onto that canvas as an index finger, which essentially tells you where to look. So I'm interested in this again because this basically art has been kind of manipulated and making more art out of art. So another, I guess this is kind of something that I is quite far away from me now, but it's worth mentioning in that some of the early works I produced were relating to touch and Merleau-Ponty. You can see by this quote, places the body at the centre of his analysis of perception. He argues that we grasp internal space, relationships between objects and our relationships to them through our position in and movement through the world. So with this in mind, I was interested in the kind of this chart here, this sensory homunculus, the sensory measured and taking limbs or parts of the body fragmented in photography. It's like a hint to something tactile. And again, that kind of comments back on that limitation of photography in itself. So I read a lot around this point.
Sorry, Holly, to interrupt you. Sorry, can everybody put their mics on mute, please? It's just that it's terribly distracting for the individual that's giving the talk if it's not on mute. Thank you. Sorry, Holly.
No worries. Can you all see the images all right?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
So phantom limb kind of connects to this phenomenology subject, and I'd worked with Julia Vogel, who ran the London Brain Project, and we did some workshops with great Ormond Street patients. And anyway, I met some scientists there, and one of them told me a lot about phantom limbs. So I started to take an interest in images of the nose, and as though people were harbouring this expression in the nose, and there's a kind of a little bit of a comical value to it too. So I paired it with the false memory syndrome, again, comparing it to photography and kind of misrepresentation. So I asked people to send me stories, and this was back in 2016, 15, I think, and people telling me stories about traumas of their past. And with those stories, I created different texts or misplaced texts. So more or less the story was for elements of everyone's histories. Artist Liza Cuco, who's in this picture, actually was a part of a moving image, and she read the nose story. So actually I'm going to play her telling the story. Please let me know if you can't hear it. It's coming soon, hold on.
It's my big nose. Look at it, harboring torment, excitement, misery, fulfillment, and it's beautiful. It's round, bulbous, and layered with memories. Anyway, it was a Thursday afternoon, perhaps 4 p.m. It took her a while to settle down, and I still had a buzz from our second show at the fetish club. I stopped cold and looked over through the bars of the padlock gate. Upon their arrival, they could only feel the magnificence of life, still trying so desperately to live. They were breathing on me. They were so close, I had to take a step back. I was flustered. I should go inside and tell them the machine was broken. There wasn't much time to recover. Each one is less traumatic, but no less demanding. The power had been turned off in every other apartment, and the only light that came in was from the street light outside. Eerie and otherworldly. It seemed to us that we were in some sort of dystopian nightmare film as we poked around in the detritus abandoned by those who had moved on. Suddenly and horribly sober, we recognized Fred. We attempted to deny this reality. I remember saying over and over again, "That is not my Fred. That 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 is not my Fred." Fred said no, he was all right. He was okay now. So we could just go get him another beer. A mistaken idea. I felt naked, like I'd been stripped, but I wasn't sure of what. That is not my Fred. I trod with caution. I was now a Londoner.
Okay, moving on from that, another, I guess, inspirational subject area is, more recently, I suppose, is this kind of ectoplasm and I guess historical mistakes in the photographic process. Really just because of the kind of substance that happens, or the product, the materiality of the ectoplasm. And I've been interested to, a lot of the chemical processes were perhaps wrong, or double exposures, and all sorts of stories came about. Perhaps there was a ghost in the picture, etc. I like to make mistakes on purpose in the darkroom to create these kind of tactile senses within the flat frame as well. We're nearly at the end of, I've just selected a few people and a few texts that I think are important, but Sigmund Freud and Brewer produced a lot of experiments studying hysteria, and within this body of work called Lazy Boy, I made these products, so things like hypnotic hats, or things like in which that you would wear to get through this or to remedy the situation. One was a scream suit, because one of the things they did was to scream out your anxieties and your fears, and this would kind of remedy the hysterical issues. Of course, it didn't really work. People just kind of screamed anything. The Lazy Boy title actually is just a reference simply to Freud's Chaise Lounge. So I got an opera singer to sing about all these chairs. Okay, so I chose the Lazy Boy chair as this remedy for hysteria, and she sort of got into it naked, actually, with a pretzel around her, an inflated pretzel. I'm not going to go too much into that particular series, but I thought you might like to see these. It's a little bit off topic, but they came about after the Lazy Boy series, and sometimes I reappropriate images, so I might use famous people. So this is Phil Mitchell in a water bath, and on the right there's Grant and Phil Mitchell in a water bath giving birth. So there was this different comfortable chair in this case, and now they're in Guy's Hospital. Actually, they're part of the birth rights collection. The midwives didn't really like them, but they're up, and they're kind of a comment on all of this and all of these like emotional extremes and the misinterpretation of these through photography. Enigma of Caspar Hauser is a really inspirational film to me as well. If you don't know this film, it's by Werner Herzog, and it's about someone who is kept in isolation for a lot of their life and then let out. So the rawness of the emotion in these is really important, I think. Sometimes he has to learn, you know, emotions. For example, one time I think in the film he gets burned by a candle and he's crying and he doesn't quite know what tears are. And so I think that was really a really important moment. And here is his first reflection into looking into a barrel. And lastly, of the kind of inspirational section, I'm really interested in conceptual photography and performance. Marina Abramovic and Yule, you probably already know, but these durational performances I think are really interesting when they work together since 1976 to 1988. So in relation in time, at the bottom on the right, this performance lasted about 16 hours, and then the audience was introduced to see it. And the top image is where they're shouting to each other's faces over and over for a long, long time. So I suppose the unexpected kind of aftermath links with my work a little bit, and that's why I have an intrigue in this. So I'm going to show you some props now. And I suppose what makes up really the work is performance, prop and text, process and flatten, and that's why I've obviously written them there. But to start with, I want to show you the props. And in each slide you'll see a kind of before and after. So some of them are edited images, and then others are just a prop on itself. So we've got this fat suit here, and a colleague of mine took some students on a weather mystery trip to Cookmere Haven, and we sort of disappeared to do this shoot, which is quite funny. So there he is, kind of climbing through the bushes. This is an edited image. You can see through the layers. There's something like that I'm interested in all the works, is to kind of hide an element. I'm not sure I really understand why as yet, but I quite like that you have to kind of look into the images to find more and more layers of you know, photography. Again, this is something that an image that I found where Bianca from EastEnders chucks a turkey across the room. I thought it was something I wanted to do. So I got a picture of a basketball, or a sculpture of a basketball, and I've been working on with clay and kind of put it into the image. More recently, I've been working with this inflatable dress, which was performed in a recent show at Lewisham Art House. And it's to do with a new project called C1 Monsters, which I'll talk about a little bit later. My inflated boat, these are all ephemeral, and most of them go in the bin in the end. They take a very long time to make. So these are just, I guess, before they were used, before they were sung in. There's a pretzel on top of that one. These are some images of fragments of that. So I cut this boat up into 200 pieces, and with the 200 pieces, I made it into photographic prints in the darkroom, and I also made it into a short film. Here you can see one of the images of the boat with a performance that happens within it. And often I shoot on slide film, so I think this was scanned to layers at the same time. The pretzel, okay, so the inflated pretzel was another prop that was produced, and on a residency, this is a residency in Trelay run by Nina Rodin. She was setting up her studio because she's doing a photo shoot every morning, and so she kind of responded to my props, and then this was one of them. And here she's kind of overlaid with a number of images. I could find the grape suit original, so on the left-hand side is a 5:4 negative of that my friend took of me in the grape suit holding the bloom. You can see on the right-hand side there's a kind of outcome what normally is there. This particular image is a bit of a collaboration with a painter called Philip Reeves, who's worked on the image and on the colour parts. And this is another version. I'd like to show you a little bit of a stop frame animation very quickly of how actually some of these sculptures or props have kind of had new forms of life or be recontextualized. So just bear with me as yeah. So I'm just going to share my PowerPoint again, if you bear with me. Okay, so some of these images are of props that I've made, and actually these ones, you can see the kind of grey texture, and that's because they've been shot on film and also then I think used as a paper negative to create texture in the darkroom. So some of the negatives are kind of on conventional surfaces. And sometimes the bits of clay or the props aren't necessarily worn, but previously, as you can see here in the project, I keep my expression in my nose, are kind of used as points in the image. And this is a huge image actually, this is probably about 55 inches square. And typically then it will be maybe a C-type print. This is my dad in a rubber ring sculpture. And there's me. This is quite an old one now. But you can see how the swan is then kind of cut up and how actually the work has changed a little bit because it was more of an accessory and now it's actually more of an outfit. So it's really important to mention performance and collaboration. As I said, I've been working with lots of writers and artists and musicians for many years, and what does reoccur is this operatic connection. And a lot of the time I really enjoy how it's read in terms of photography, because it's you never really quite know whether the person is shouting, screaming in pain or happy, or and I really like that ambiguity. I like the kind of the performance. Another recent project I'm working on with bookmaker Tim Burrow and Kathleen Curtis is a science researcher, and she looks at colon imagery. And so we're working together to create kind of collages of colon images into books. Most recently, you can see here highlighted sort of Talia, who I've been working with on various projects. And I'm going to come back and show you a video of her in a moment. Sometimes I might still film stills as well, but this is from the Enigma of Caspar Hauser to reappropriate. I'm going to read you one story, which was an accumulation again of people's stories. So I'll start now. So I think this is the first one I've made. I tried to console myself in the usual way, but these spasms were uncontrollable. I was in a Russian roulette game I didn't want to be in. This didn't bode well for my future as a championship surfer. The excitement and motion had gone. Something within me had died and changed. The more I thought about it, the more it hurt. The more it hurt, the more I thought about it. Perhaps these cathartic actions were necessary for my recovery. Time after time, I would fight them, but this inevitable degeneration into attack persisted. I sat still for a moment, fighting these painful urges, and out of nowhere I saw a black shadow figure. I was shitting myself, I've got to admit. I was calmed by a young man. This guy suggested it was actually just a demon, that there were loads around the house. It left me with an impression my house was full of these entities. His ambivalence and call tone eventually made me so angry that I burst into song. The song numbers over and over as though it was a broken computer. This was ironic, as his insistent robotic attempt at warmth was similarly cold. He went on to talk relentlessly about a really unique Italian cycling jumper. Process, moving on again, is really important. In this image, you can see a fogged jelly photogram, another layer of fogged image, a man upside down in a grape suit, a picture of Land's End that's been fogged in the process of printing. So all of these are kind of scanned in at high resolutions at various different points and kind of squished together via Photoshop. They don't always work like that. Sometimes they work through just printing. So some of the processes I've got here, and this is a bit of a short list actually, drawing onto three-dimensional objects, 6x7 analog, stage performance objects and shoot on location, digital scanning, black and white darkroom experiments, fogging, overlaying, adjusting, obscuring negatives, drawing onto negatives, alternative negative materials, multiple layers, images upside down, cut up, destroyed, sculptures, things like that. So that takes me to my most recent work, and something I've been working towards is a project called C1 Monsters, and this was one of the first images I made of the lady in the inflated dress performing. She's upside down, the negatives are covered in salt, and she is paired with an image of Canary Island. Canary Island, I've worked with a little bit before, but what determines a place is this map, and the reason it's called C1 Monsters is because it's a C1 IMREG chart, which charts points from Tilbury to Orfordness in Suffolk. For me, I was born in Essex, and I used to go camping a lot in Suffolk, and I know a lot of these areas, so there was something personal about it. But I wanted to create these kind of monsters that sat in this estuary. I wanted to create this tactile, ambiguous, unknown thing, object, monster. I looked at lots of monster books and things and online. All I could get at the moment, I had like a monster list, and there's lots of cliches here, but I'm going to share it anyway. Headless, head in chest, fascination and disgust. Features, featureless, multiple features, translucent, multiple eyes, long nose, cone head, hybridity, saucer-shaped UFO head, luminous head, lots of teeth, killer tail, translucent, nocturnal, melts into a puddle, water nymph, long noses, so lots of bubbles and currents like volcanoes. So I think that it could be beautiful, and it could be bizarre, it could be grotesque, and it really fits with that kind of tactile element and that kind of fictitious thing I'm interested in. This here is a picture of a kind of found fish that's assumed is a sort of monster on the beach or something like that. Again, I quite like the idea of taking features from these areas. So this is another image, completely completed image of this the dress again. I thought it was just important to show you a couple of images of where I worked with some Dr. Feelgoods before, and they were from Canvey Island, the 70s rock band, and I went to school with one of the members' daughters, and I remember going to the Oyster Fleet Hotel, and anyway, I photographed them before they went on stage, relating back to that James Lang theory of emotion. I made sure that everyone was saying these negative terms, and I called over and over, conjuring up this kind of unusual experience, and I called the project Dr. Feel Bad. So I wasn't totally happy. It's very old work with it. I had gone to a wedding where one of the bridesmaids of the daughter, one of the bridesmaids flashed me, so I felt it was quite important. So I'm going to show you a performance of the Canvey Island singer. Okay, so the lady who is performing in the dress. And sorry, could someone please mute them so I can hear them? Here we go.
And calling her to be our new life. And we lift our hopes and voices to thy Make what him on and alcohol. I want to wonder and alcohol. I got one again. 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 Alcohol. I got one again.
Okay, so actually, I think Natalia is here. Is that right? Are you there, Natalia?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello. So Natalia is the singer in this performance. So I have a couple of questions to ask her just to share with you all. I am curious to know how you responded to the text that I gave you, and also how, I don't know, your experience of being in that big inflated dress.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I guess the video sort of shows quite a small fragment of what was a fairly sizable text that kind of evoked a real sort of collage of perspectives for me of Canvey Island. It's something I knew very little about when I first started working with Holly. So there's a kind of sense of almost like a tour guide, sort of voice of some Essex boys, like sort of history professor, and then something kind of quite surreal as well, you know, kind of phrases like jellyfish flying through the air, will it sink, salt should not be undervalued. And so I think it was quite interesting to me because on one hand it sort of evoked this sort of kind of quite a factual sense of it. You know, you got a sense of the kind of deep history of the place, and then there was also a kind of connection. It also felt a little bit post-apocalyptic. So yeah, definitely really sort of fired up the imagination. And I think all of these, the kind of convergence of all of these different perspectives reminded me of this piece by John Cage, where you've got kind of 4 different lectures kind of happening at once. And so I sort of tried in working with this text to develop certain different voices that encapsulated some of the different perspectives, and sometimes I was able to blend. They would sort of blend sometimes. I guess like the way that in a dream, somebody like one person would become somebody else. But yeah, as you could probably see from the video, it's a fairly dreamlike scenario. Yeah, so that was kind of working with the text. Yeah, the dress itself, I have to say, was absolutely amazing to wear. It kind of hugs you and sort of buoys you up. It sort of almost feels like, I mean, I would recommend it as therapy, actually. It's, you know, it's kind of just feels like deeply reassuring, like getting this big inflatable hug. And you kind of feel quite massive and powerful, which kind of, at least in my case, brings out a certain sense of transgressiveness and a kind of desire, sort of like, what can I get away with? And that's something that I found generally working with Holly's garments. I did a performance in her grape suit as well, where I just sort of, it's like once you've got the costume on, you just sort of feel like quite a, yeah, I guess sort of quite a lot of sense of liberation or something like that. So yeah, I guess that's kind of just a bit about my experience of working with Holly's text and bringing it out.
Thank you, Natalia. I hadn't mentioned that it was, yeah, it was such a small clip, but actually it was about a 20-minute performance, wasn't it, with various yeah, parts and you know, discussions over the Canby Island. I am going to just quickly share with you some images to finalise, which are based on other parts of the estuary. Okay. So I did also work with some images of the Isle of Grain, and so this was quite an early experiment into the estuary series, really. And later it's become more specific to what outfit relates to what area, but at this point I was kind of exploring various props and more drawing onto paper and scanning and introducing them through that. The last is Holbridge, which actually is where I'm from originally, and so I thought this was quite a kind of important one for me, and there's this emphasis on clay and hair, and I'd found out that there was this kind of myth of a witch doctor who kind of recovered people's bald heads and gave them lots of hair, so I kind of got carried away with that as a part of the kind of monstrous theme, and I'm still sort of working on these, really. These images were darkroom pictures, these ones here now, and so they were printed at quite a large scale, 20 by 24 inches, and sort of installed as a large wall piece. So Southend-on-Sea is one I really only just started, and I was looking at these kind of worms and kind of creating something mysterious, with the long nose actually, which is just scanned and extended into a very long piece. Inspired as well by Magritte to create a little bit of a playful image with the noses, repeating the same person, the sea in the background. It's the south end pier, so, which is actually the longest pier. So his nose is the longest, as long as the pier in this image. So these are just a start, really, that I'm showing you. And I thought it was important to show you just a little bit of the outcome that you might see. A lot of the time they're bigger than this, but you can see there the images are about 100 centimeters square, and sometimes the outcome is a book. This is a very old piece, but I just wanted to, they might be then kind of embedded and laid in a different way. I think that's all I have to say, and I'm actually, with regards to the C1 monsters, so I guess thank you for listening. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask now. Okay.
I mean, maybe I can start on that front. Thank you ever so much for giving your talk, Holly. It's absolutely fantastic. Fascinating works. Brilliant visually too. So I wanted to ask, because I've actually never asked this of you, although, you know, sort of you're a close friend of mine. What is your fascination with the inflatable?
Well, you know, before the inflatable, it was clay. So it's really about this, it's about making something really three-dimensional back into 2D. So I'm almost not really interested in the inflatable, but interested in the image of the inflatable. And I do like the process, actually, having said that, but that's my reason. But actually, if you've drawn on an inflatable, it is really fun. And actually, Natalia, I went into the outfit too, and bounced around in the dress, and it is pretty nice. It's you should have a go, Sam. I'll let you wear it. But yeah, I guess that's it. It's a great surface to work on. But for that reason, I want to create, to kind of contradict the flatness.
Hi, Holly.
Hello.
Sophie. I just wanted to say that because I'm from Essex as well, I just really enjoyed the Canvey Island, and the you know, it brings back loads of memories for me as well. So it's just really nice to see.
Oh, you'll have to help me with some facts another time then.
Yeah, it's really nice. Brings a lot of like nostalgia for me. So yeah, it's really nice to see. Good work.
Essex girls. So if there aren't any other questions, shall we end that, Sam, or does anyone else want to say anything? Okay. All right, thank you guys. Thanks so much for listening.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Holly, and also, sorry, Natasha? Natalia, for also, you know, sort of adding in to the talk, and, you know, so thanks for everybody else that had come along to listen. We do this every time. If everyone takes their mics off and gives Holly a round of applause, I think that's, you know. I mean, doesn't anybody else have any questions at all? Because yeah, now's the time. No.
Holly, you have a kind of manic side in the textures that you make on the inflatables. If some of the inspiration behind that, or is that feel more, I don't know, cathartic? Everything else seems very researched, but it feels very impulsive.
Yeah, I mean, I did have intentions of, and I do sometimes start with an image that looks intense, like a volcano erupting or something like that, and start with kind of mimicking some of anything I really make doesn't really look like what it is. But so sometimes I would have an image to start with, but to be honest, I haven't done that in a while because I feel like it is more cathartic. But you know what? There's also this idea that I know when it's finished or I'm unsatisfied with the area of detail or how something looks. So that dress took me ages because I just kept putting more and more layers on. So there's something I think probably more intuitive in thinking about detail and texture and how it looks together. But probably I'm also thinking about what it would look photographically. I'm not sure I'm entirely thinking about what it looks like in front of me. It's like I have two minds because in the end that's what it's for.
I mean, would you ever consider, sorry, I'm going back to the inflatable thing. Would you ever consider sort of displaying the images sort of two-dimensionally? Just as somebody said, Philip Rees said inflatables can be 2D and 3D depending on how they are inflated. Instead of the whole sort of like photographic process, would you sort of bring them into this an installation process, but instead of them being inflated, them to be sort of like a two-dimensional sort of wall piece of some sort or another?
Yeah, I mean sometimes I cut them up.
Right.
Quite like that. I mean, you saw that clay quick animation, but that happens with boats. So actually, I've seen them. I sort of handle them and work with them 2D. But no, I don't often show them. I don't really ever show them. Yes, I would consider it, but I don't know. I'm so used to being removed from it a little bit through photography. Sure. But it's interesting actually the surface and that kind of imagine opening the dress up and it being like a flat person stuck to the wall that much. But I feel I've actually mislaid it. But yeah, I think I might know what it is, but I'm not sure about when I'll do that to each piece. Or when it's exhausted, like if Natalia might see it again, or it might occur again. But yes, actually, I'm sat next to a pile of the boat, which is like in 200 pieces, sort of like that. Yeah.
So, oh wow.
Yeah. So there's a bag of those. Might make something else. Can't bring myself to throw them away.
Total artist there. Anybody else at all?
Do you have a favourite monster, Holly?
I guess Sister Canby Island one at the moment. Just the dress. I can't get over the dress. But there'll be more to come. I kind of want to get more elaborate with them too. I think they could be bigger. I think they could be more grotesque. I think, I want to go further. So at the moment, I'm going to say. I know you're a Southend boy.
I mean, actually, just to come back in, I mean, with regards to, because obviously, I also was brought up in Essex. So, I mean, do you find that the territory of being from Essex is very important to your practice, and especially that of the estuary?
I haven't before, actually.
No.
No, but I'm really fascinated with it, actually, at the moment. Probably it was always going to happen. But I don't know, I do feel attached to the places, certainly. But some of the map I don't know at all, and some of the others I've aren't in Essex, but I still know them. But you know, I'm quite excited to make a Southend monster, for example, because I feel like I know that place really well. But no, not really. I quite like it though.
I suppose it's funny, isn't it? Because, you know, the sense of home with regards to one's ideology within their sort of creative cycles is very much removed from that of the place of home with regards to where it is that you are sort of truly sort of like brought up, and that particular county culture, as it were, and how that then is sort of transpires into a making process is always sort of quite fascinating. I mean, I know that for myself, you know, sort of just speaking from my own point and perspective, I get very frustrated with people from Essex a lot of the time, you know, because, you know, it's one of those counties that has sort of a lot of there's a lot of stereotypes and stigma attached to it, and actually people from Essex are very lovely, but then there are those sort of very sort of charged individuals that really feel that idea of what a person from Essex is like. But then sort of going back to the balance of being in, I mean, my studio has always been in Essex, so I've always had sort of engineers and industry working with me on projects in Essex, and I mean, inspiration very easily comes from that. But I suppose as well, it's like, I mean, I know that you're a particular fan of a place like Dungeness, right?
Like Dungeness, yeah. Mm.
It's also like it's the work sort of has sort of like a really serious type of absurdity to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's quite a scary place as well, really.
Yeah.
And I quite like the idea of it becoming a bit of a sci-fi, you know, among this sort of bleak space.
Are there films which are directly linked to, you know, sort of any of the pieces, you know, sort of sci-fi?
No, not really. No, it's just not yet. I mean, there's quite a lot, and actually, what I imagine it to be is kind of a book, and or a series of books, you know, from each space. Tilbury is another area that I've shot as well, which is really interesting. So who knows what will come from that? But you know, I might find sort of relevant films and things. But also, like what you say about the negative stereotypes, I kind of want to embrace those too. You know, maybe stiletto monster or you know, something like that, perhaps.
No, well, fantastic. Again, thank you so much, Holly, for your time and for putting together this talk. It really, really sort of evoking to your ideas. Brilliant. Yeah, and I mean, again, let's give her a round of applause. Susie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do have another lecture on Sunday, right?
Yeah, Nathaniel talking at I can't remember what time it's 4 o'clock on Sunday. Let me just check. Yeah, 4 p.m.
Cool. Yeah, so if you guys fancy popping along to that one on Sunday, please do. Again, thank you so much for, you know, sort of taking, sort of being. Yeah, and have a lovely weekend, guys.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.